Hi there, welcome. This is the Kelly's Astrology podcast, where you can find insight, guidance, and understanding through astrology. I'm Kelly, and I'll be your host. Hey there, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. This is episode 19, and I'm recording this episode about the astrology of the week starting October 28. Today's episode is going to bring you even more eclipse info because we are now at the second eclipse in the current season, which is really October 2023. So coming up on Saturday, October 28th, there is going to be a lunar eclipse at 5 degrees of Taurus. Now, even though it's an eclipse and it might bring all kinds of feelings as well as heightened emotion, I do kind of like the potentials that this eclipse might support. More on that in a moment. Time is running out to sign up for the special bundle offer and save on my full astrology training program. If you sign up before November 6th, you will get the very best once in 2 years deal. And joining my program means you get access to more than 70 hours of astrology training, plus live Q&As with me. There are homework activities, and you also get access to a private student discussion forum. So if you're ready to add some magic to your life, if you're ready to learn about the cosmic cycles that influence all of us, I hope to see you in class. So with that said, back to the eclipses. So it is our second eclipse of the eclipse season, and this one is a lunar or a full moon eclipse in Taurus. So we can only ever have a lunar eclipse at a full moon. It's a north node eclipse, as the moon is closest to the north node at the time of the eclipse. That means it's a little bit more of a future-focused or forward-looking astrological event, and this eclipse might help reveal a logical or practical path forward. This eclipse is more of a partial eclipse, and there is a much bigger distance or orb from the node itself to the moon at the time of the eclipse. So the node is at 24 Aries, and the lunation, which is what creates the eclipse, that's the full moon in this case, that's happening at 5 Taurus. So we've got the node at 24 Aries and the lunation itself at 5 Taurus. So they're about 11 degrees apart. Now, if you are watching this on YouTube, I'm just going to bring the chart up on the screen so you can see what I'm talking about there. The North Node at 24 Aries and the moon at 5 degrees of Taurus. So that's about 11 degrees distance. So it's a little bit of a bigger gap. And this eclipse is also one of what we call those split sign eclipses, where the nodes are in one pair of signs. We've got the South Node in Libra and the North Node in Aries right now. And the lunation or the full moon itself is in a different pair of signs. We've got the full moon in Taurus, which means the sun is in Scorpio. So we've got the nodes activating Aries and Libra and the lunation in Taurus and Scorpio. Now, it's important to just check in with that Taurus and Scorpio theme for a minute. This is actually the last eclipse on that Taurus-Scorpio axis. So it also marks the end of an eclipse pattern or cycle that began back in November of 2021. And I think holding that insight that this eclipse really does represent endings, that it's bringing to a conclusion something that perhaps began back in 2021, that's going to be really important as you navigate life this last weekend in October. I'd encourage you to being open to seeing that the way forward in one area of life might require you to end something in a different area of your life. And this eclipse really does mark the end of a 2-year chapter. So think about what kind of bookmark or closure you can work towards. It might be helpful to think back on your life around November of 2021. Think about where you were, what you were doing, what you were planning, and consider whether the priorities you had then in late 2021 have been sorted out, if you've dealt with them, if you've achieved the goals you had then, or whether there is still some unfinished business that you need to finalize or complete that's kind of been lingering for the last couple of years. For me personally, Late 2021 was when Peter and I had just moved back from 2 years living in Belgium, and we were still really trying to find our footing and getting settled back in our home. I think that we'd been back for a few months, but probably all our furniture and belongings had only been back for a few weeks. And so when I think back to how we were then and some of the goals we had, but also how unsettled we felt, 2 years later, late 2023, we've really finally kind of just recently felt like we have fully nestled in. We came home with some plans to renovate and make some needed and necessary updates to our home. And so even though we've been home for a couple of years, it's only just in the last few months that we're really feeling very grounded and connected here. We've really created some great rituals, and we've been able to deepen the connections with both the general community, but also our close friends here. In some ways, it feels like where we are now is the place that we dreamed about back then. And I wonder if that's something similar that you can reflect on, whether there was a goal or a dream or a vision that you had for your life in late 2021. It might have been something small, it might have been something specific, it might have been something really major. But just see if there is an acknowledgement that you can bring to your awareness right now about that timeline from November 21 to October 23, and whether you can feel that you've moved through or come closer to something that you had that's been a guiding thing for you. So that's one way to think about this eclipse at the end of October. It's, of course, influencing the energy of the last weekend of October 2023, but it also brings to an end a plan, a dream, a vision, or even a problem that you were navigating from late 2021. Coming back to now, October of 2023, this is an eclipse weekend. And so it definitely has that wild card, anything is possible quality. We know that there is a little bit of chaos baked into the mythology and theory around eclipses. So we need to be a little flexible and open to things going in unexpected ways. But even keeping in mind that anything is possible kind of vibe of the eclipse, I do think that there might be some welcome progress or even a positive development that may emerge as well. This eclipse has the moon at 5 Taurus, and Jupiter is really close by at 11 Taurus. So there is this undertone or kind of like hidden underlying quality of uplift and expansion that is also part of this eclipse. And I think that moon near Jupiter combination really highlights the potential to tune in and connect with an option or a possibility that might feel really rich or meaningful for you. As if with the changing kind of quality of light and shadow that the eclipse brings up, you become aware of something that has been overlooked in the regular busyness or routine of life. And that inkling or awareness might be surprising, it might be joyful, it might be opening, but either way, you want to pay attention to it. So under this eclipse, there is the possibility of having that moment of optimism or of really feeling very generous and finding yourself encouraging or motivating, kind of going into almost cheerleader role, either for yourself or others. And that can feel very genuine with this type of Moon-Jupiter link. Now, this eclipse is in Taurus, and so it is ruled by Venus, and Venus is in Virgo. Now, we mentioned a little bit about Venus in Virgo 2 episodes ago in episode 17, when I was talking about that solar eclipse in Libra, which was also ruled by Venus in Virgo. However, the difference is that this time around, we do have the Taurus eclipse ruled by Venus in Virgo, but Venus in Virgo makes a direct aspect to the eclipse itself, forming a trine from Virgo to Taurus, where the eclipse is. And I love this aspect as it indicates that there is some focus and some flow emanating from this Taurus eclipse. I know eclipses can be dramatic, and I'm not saying there won't be drama this weekend. This is a full moon eclipse after all. But some of the major changes or shocks that are associated with eclipses, sometimes they're the shocks of the good kind. And I do wonder about that good shock or that kind of, surprise, but maybe it's a welcome surprise or there's some sort of positive element to it as being part of this eclipse in Taurus. And that's to do with Venus, the lady, if you like, of the eclipse, or Lord of the eclipse, making that trine, that favorable trine aspect to Taurus. And so that's where we get that idea of pleasant surprise. The relationship from Venus to this eclipse would be called the fifth house relationship because Virgo is 5 signs around from Taurus. So we get that fifth house dynamic. And that really emphasizes pleasure, play, leisure, and relaxation. So there are a lot of themes about this eclipse pointing you towards what's enjoyable or as an indication for just having a good time. So that's something to keep in mind. And as a personal side note, I have personally in my own life experienced some of those kind of good shock eclipse events. I actually met Peter when I was experiencing some eclipses across the 1st and 7th house in my personal chart. So meeting him and then moving countries just a few months later was definitely a life-changing kind of upheaval, chaotic thing, but it's turned out to be a really wonderful thing. So I want you to keep these possibilities in mind as you contemplate taking maybe a really big swing at life this weekend. Sometimes you do just have to take that leap of faith, and this eclipse really encourages a big kind of liftoff. It's very much about tuning into a plan for moving forward. It's like connecting with what's next for your growth, like what's the next stage of growth or leveling up. And this eclipse weekend might actually bring an invitation or present an offer to you that is really worth considering. It might be a wild but exciting possibility, but I would be open to that under this eclipse weekend. So there's some of the good points about this eclipse, but of course it is an eclipse. And if you find yourself feeling frazzled or unsettled or agitated in general, just really churned up emotionally, which is all very possible, these are all common eclipse symptoms, if you like. Here are 3 helpful eclipse tips. Some of them are specific to this eclipse in Taurus, and some of them are kind of good general eclipse strategies to have in your back pocket. The first one is get in the water. Take a long shower, soak in the bath, get in the ocean or the lake if that's an option for you. Water on the skin is balancing on so many levels. It balances us on a physical, physiological level, but it also really has a balancing, cleansing effect emotionally and energetically. So getting the water on your skin and then maybe putting some lovely oil on your body after you have showered or bathed. Second point is to get in nature or some green space, outdoor green space. This is an eclipse in Taurus after all. And so the wisdom of the trees, of the plants, of the flowers, that sort of patient, steady, persistent and consistent quality that we get from nature can be especially soothing and calming this weekend. And the third tip is to get cooking. Taurus is a sign that loves good food. It really enjoys preparing food. It enjoys eating food. So one of the most grounding things that you can do this weekend is to make a meal from scratch. You might cook up a soup or a casserole. Maybe you want to do a roast of some kind. Maybe you've got more of a sweet craving, also very common with Taurus, and you want to make up a batch of cookies or a cake or a brownie or some other sweet treat. And so these acts of chopping and measuring and stirring and baking, they can seem really simple, but they may help connect you to something that's kind of primal, but also really calming. So there are a few tips for this particular eclipse weekend in Taurus. Now, there's one final point that I want you to keep in mind for this eclipse in Taurus, and that is that choices will be necessary. A lunar or a full moon eclipse is an opposition between the 2 lights. We've got the sun in Scorpio and the moon in Taurus in this instance. And that's sort of like you're being presented with 2 different options, 2 different pathways, 2 different possibilities, and you need to decide which one you want. You don't actually get to have both. This is definitely an either or situation. This eclipse weekend, that either or pressure to choose is reinforced by 2 other aspects or opposition aspects, I should be more specific about, involving Mercury, Mars, and Jupiter. Now, I go into more details on the exact specifics of those Mercury, Mars, and Jupiter aspects inside the Astrology Guide membership. So if you want more on that, pop over to my website, kellysastrology.com to grab that info. And I won't go into all those details here because I want to keep us focused. But I did want to mention that with 3 different types of opposition aspects forming this weekend, there's the full moon lunar eclipse, that's an opposition. And then we've got 2 oppositions involving Mercury, Mars, and Jupiter. So those 3 different opposition aspects over the same 24-hour period, primarily Saturday the 28th, it'll be Sunday the 29th if you're in Australia. This is definitely where we need to make choices. So it's either this or it's that. Oppositions are deciding between 2 things. Sometimes the stress of an opposition aspect is the stress of having to make a decision. I don't know about you, but having to choose things can sometimes really unsettle me. Do I stick with this? Do I let it go? Do I go in this direction? Do I go in that direction? Do I do this thing or that thing? This first, that second? You know what choices and how stressful choices can be. This weekend presents us with at least one important choice that we are going to have to make a decision about. You don't have the time or the energy or the capacity for both, and you actually don't have a lot of time, energy, or capacity to stay in that indecisive space. In fact, the sooner you decide, the more enjoyment you're going to be able to get out of whatever it is you choose to focus on. Deciding in a clear, bold way is also going to help you get a head start on the progress that is promised by this eclipse. So keep that in mind. Make a decision. Give yourself permission to be wrong, but we just want to decide and keep up a little bit of momentum. Finally, every eclipse is a chance to break an old pattern. And so maybe this weekend you're choosing possibility instead of fear. Maybe you're choosing to try instead of sticking with something that's really safe. Growth happens outside what you're already familiar with. So if you really want to expand and connect into this Jupiter and Venus themes this weekend, you really will have to experiment and put yourself in a new or a different setting. I think you might find it's worth it. So I look forward to hearing about your experiences with this eclipse. Let me know what you choose. What do you decide to say yes to? What do you get clear you want to say no to? And if you're ready to say yes to more magic and insight in your life, I hope to see you in class. We start November 6th, and that special bundle offer does run out then. You can sign up and save today via my website, kellysastrology.com. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. I so appreciate your time and attention. I will see you next week for a new month and a look at the very different astrology coming through in November. But for now, that is bye from me, and we will talk again soon. Take care.